Welcome to Venture Unscripted, a podcast where we talk with founders and entrepreneurs about their journey from 0 to 1.
Welcome everyone to Venture Unscripted. Today I have with me Yu-kai Chou. He's the world-renowned gamification expert and developer of the Octalysis framework. So welcome, Yu-kai.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So today I'd love to know a little bit more about you. Tell a little bit about your background and a little bit more about your story.
Sure. So I've been a enthusiast of gamification since 2003, so almost 20 years ago, and that eventually made me a pioneer in the industry. And so I started a variety of startups in this space, and then 2012 I published something called the Octalysis framework on my blog ukaicchou.com, and since then it took off quite well. Within a year, it's translated organically into 16 different languages, and that's when I got it to get invitations to speak at different places like Harvard, Stanford, Oxford, Yale, Tesla, IDEA, Google, across the board. And I started doing a lot of consulting work for it and design. So I was rated a #1 gamification guru in the world out of the top 100. I think 3 out of 4 years later, they made me a judge. So that kind of disqualifies me from being a guru. And I wrote a book called Actionable Gamification. Sold a little over 100,000 copies, so pretty happy about that, and working on my second book. And I'm running 3 companies right now. One is a consulting design agency called the Octalysis Group. The other is an education platform called Octalysis Prime, basically a platform to learn about all the things I'm talking about. And then a Web3, kind of like a museum project called Metablocks. And then besides that, there's some side things, like I was contracting chief experience officer of Decentral, so helping one of the co-founders of Ethereum to craft good Web3 blockchain experiences. And I was also for some time the head of creative labs and head of digital commerce for HTC and Vive, so doing VR, AR, and XR kind of stuff. So I kind of have an interesting intersection on things like gamification, Web3, and the metaverse stuff. And that's kind of my background in a nutshell.
Oh, awesome. A lot of stuff you got going on. I know you and I talked a while, and I was very blown away by it made me feel like I'm not an entrepreneur by how many things you have going on in parallel. So I'd love to dig in a little bit more. And so I actually didn't hear about, the whole origin story of yourself, about you posting on a blog, this Octalysis framework. Talk a little bit about, I'd love to know a little bit of an origin story behind that, of how did you come up with the Octalysis framework?
Yeah, I mean, there's a earlier origin story, which is 2003, how I stumbled upon gamification, or do you want me to go straight to?
Yeah, let's start there. How you stumbled upon gamification and how it led to that.
All right, so in 2003, I was a very heavy gamer, played tons of games, and moved around a lot because my father's a diplomat. So I grew up in South Africa, Taiwan, Kansas, and then California. And so at the time, I played a lot of Diablo 2. But at one point, my friends started quitting the game, and so I quit too. So I was in this transitional period between quitting a game and starting a new game, and I just felt extremely empty. I thought, wow, I spent thousands of hours getting my in-game characters strong. They leveled up, they have strong gear, I have all this gold. And then when I quit the game, I have nothing. Just part of my life just disappeared. I was the same loser in front of the computer after all those thousands of hours. So then I just started thinking about, what kind of game that everyone is playing and you can't just quit. And also, it would be amazing if there's a game where the more hours you spend on it, the better your real life is. Mm-hmm. So that led me down the path of thinking about, okay, what is the real game in life? And I realized that life is the real game in itself. And I thought, hey, everyone's playing this game, but most of them don't realize this, especially when they're they're students. Everyone's just in town, just kind of being idle, walking back and forth, watching TV. But it's like, no, of course you would go out and kill monsters, get experience, level up, get gold, do quests, get alliances, right? And so I thought, hey, if I started treating my life like a game and started leveling up everything I do, one day my friends, they'll graduate college and they'll be like, oh, I'm playing this game too. I better go out and start leveling up. And at that time, I might be level 27 or something. So that eventually I might become the strongest player on the Earth server. So that kind of led me down the path of this gamification thing. And then that's when I first of all, I treated my life like a game. And honestly, it's very different because before that, you know, when there are things you have to do, things for work or for school, you kind of do the bare minimum to reach your expectations, right? In school, it's like get an acceptable grade. Doesn't matter if you're an A student, B student, C student. You study hard enough to get an acceptable grade, and then you stop, and then you go play games. At work, you know, I do this with a lot of my corporate clients. We talk about how most employees just work hard enough to get a paycheck and not get fired, right? And then they stop. So, but when you see it as a game, you're not going to do the bare minimum and stop. You're going to try to be the best possible, right? You want to thrive and strive and flourish and even think about how to strategize and become like this amazing, synergetically strong character. So then I started becoming almost, you know, pretty much good at everything I was doing at the time, and eventually led me to start my first businesses, which I saw as a game too.
What I'm curious about is what were the reward mechanisms when you gamified your life? Like, did you get like, I'm envisioning in my head, I have, you know, 3 kids and like I have gold stars. Like what was the reward mechanisms for you, like you put in place? You know, how did you gamify it? I guess I'm just out of curiosity.
Yeah, so there are really 2 types of gamification. One is like seeing the world in your life through a gamification lens, like a gaming lens, and the other is little games you design to get certain things done. Now, when we look at gamification design, so the Octalysis framework that I'm the most known for, it divides all motivation into 8 core drives. And among these 8 core drives, there's different types of motivation. Specifically for this question, there's what we call extrinsic motivation versus intrinsic motivation. So extrinsic motivation are things you do for a reward, a purpose, or a goal, but you don't necessarily enjoy the activity itself. So once you obtain the reward, you hit your goals or get used to the reward, it becomes stale and you kind of drop out. Whereas intrinsic motivation are things you just enjoy doing to the point that you're even willing to spend money just to experience it. And even if you lost all your progress the next day, all your money, your coins, your NFTs, whatever, you would still want to do the activity today because that's how you measure your quality of life. You know, how much time you spend just on things you enjoy doing. So when it talks about rewards, so extrinsic motivation, there's a variety of extrinsic motivation. There's a sense of progression, feeling like you improve. There's also, you know, like the points or badges, status. There's also the monetary rewards. So a lot of times when you see a life as a game, a lot of just seeing your progress. Well, first of all, when I saw like my life as a game, everything was intrinsically more enjoyable. So I like to do it more. There's more creativity in everything I do. I wanted to not just do the bare minimum, but I wanted to figure out if there's a better way to make it even better. There's social influence. I saw all my interactions with people around me as allies. So we do this together and it's more enjoyable. Now, there are mechanisms that are built in from a extrinsic standpoint, but the number one is just the feeling of growth and improvement progress. You know, the thing is that in games, it will show you these mechanics. Like, hey, you're level 2, now you're level 3. Oh, you got 23 experience points. Right. In life, you actually don't see these things, right? You just kind of like, well, I've been doing this for a year. I guess I'm better at it. I guess I'm leveled up. I'm not sure, right? But if you acknowledge it, you know this is happening. It does make you more motivated. Make you more driven, and then you can see results from, you know, your grade improving or being a state competition. And I finished like number 2 in chess also. I did a lot of things really well during that period of time in terms of writing my string quartet music, writing a Chinese novel, you know, studied acupuncture, you know, did a lot of things, debate, all that stuff. And then when I was a freshman in college, I started my first company because that was like a game like StarCraft, you know, and obviously the reward for starting a business is that you have successful you know, customers that buy from your product, buy from you, and you generate revenue. So that was the reward.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Tell me a little bit more. I mean, you mentioned on the Octalysis framework. I want to get to the point where maybe we dissect that a little bit. I know you and I've learned a lot from your Octalysis framework, but I'd love to also talk about what was the leap from you've gamified your life to you've then created this framework that all of these, you know, it's pretty well known and a lot of companies are starting to use for how they're looking at gamification.
Yeah, so it goes from 2003 to 2012. So 9 years has passed, right? In these 9 years, I've, again, did some startups, some more successful than others. And in 2012, I stepped down as the CEO of a basically gamified restaurant loyalty program called Reward Me. And I'm like, and that was also the year I was getting married. So I'm like, okay, what do I do now? And I just started to write, and I'm like, okay, I have a lot of experience about this gamification world, and maybe I should just share some things I know about. I was intellectually curious too, to like organize some of the things I observed from games and from some of my work. I also noticed at that time there was this growing industry actually called gamification, because before that there wasn't a real industry. It was just a lonely passion for me. But I noticed there was a lot of misconceptions. People who came out and talked about gamification. A lot of them come from backgrounds like academia, enterprise software, marketing, some are game designers, and I feel like a lot of their backgrounds, they actually have never been immersed in the world of gaming before. Maybe they played Angry Birds with their kids or whatnot, and so they would just say, "Hey, look, gamification is just adding points and badges, and that's what makes it a game." And I'm like, that's not what makes a game fun. Like when I'm playing this game till 5 in the morning and I still don't want to go to bed, it's not because I'm looking at these points and these badges. It's because of the strategy, the milestone unlocks and the teamwork and all that stuff. So I decided to write more about it, and I started looking at why some games are super addictive for a few months and then everyone burns out, and then why there are games that people can play for like decades or even centuries, like chess. So I started coming up with some patterns. Eventually, I formed the Octalysis framework, which eventually became a huge hit.
Oh yeah. So I'd love for you to go into, for those that don't know the Octalysis framework, just give a high level. I know there's two different quadrants. You talked about intrinsic and extrinsic, and I know that there's also what is it called? I don't want to say
Black hat.
yes, black hat and white hat. I'd love to know a little bit more, dive a little bit more into that for those that don't know.
Sure. So first of all, it's called the Octalysis because it's a combination between the word octagon and analysis. So the framework, for those who want something visual, it's an octagon, and each side of the octagon has what we call one of the 8 core drives of human motivation. So everything we do in life is based on one or more of these 8 core drives, which means that if there's none of these 8 core drives there's zero motivation, no behavior happens. And out of these 8 core drives, there's, like I said, different natures. So there's the white hat versus black hat motivation core drives, white hat being on the top of the octagon and black hat being on the bottom of the octagon. So white hat are motivation that makes people feel powerful, in control, they feel good, but there's no sense of urgency, so they procrastinate, because they can do it anytime they want, they feel in control. Whereas black hat motivation core drives are ones that make people feel urgent, obsessed, even addicted. But in the long run, people feel out of control of their own behaviors. So if that's the only motivation, it could leave a bad taste in their mouths, and they might, burn out at one point. And then there's what we call left brain versus right brain core drives, which doesn't necessarily mean it's geographically on the left versus right side of the brain, because that's been debated upon in the neuroscience world. But it's more symbolic, where left brain symbolically represents our logical brain and right brain symbolically represents our emotional brain. And it's very nice for design tool to have that left side of the octagon, left brain core drives, right side of the octagon, right brain core drives, where just like I said, left brain core drives are about extrinsic motivation, and then right brain core drives about intrinsic motivation. Now, so let's give it a quick example. So on the right bottom of the octagon is core drive 7, unpredictability and curiosity. So that's the drive about satisfying curiosity or gambling, etc., etc. And it's on the right bottom, so it's right side, right brain, intrinsic, our brain enjoys it, but it's black hat, we feel out of control. So that's like you want to go to bed at 10 p.m., but then you binge watch Netflix till 3 in the morning, right? It's right brain, your brain enjoyed it, but it's black hat, you felt out of control. You weren't able to go to bed when you actually planned to do it. So when you look at the Octalysis framework, you'll explain pretty much every behavior you're doing in their life, and also how to improve it, the nature of it, and also how to create environments that motivate people towards new behaviors.
So I would love, maybe you could talk about a couple examples of, I'd love to pick your brain on what are a couple games that use some of these different techniques, maybe a little bit differently, but you still think each of these examples be considered a good game, like from your standpoint, like, I think this is a good game, and it might use white hat or it might use black hat. Like, what are some games and some examples of how they've used the Octalysis framework? Maybe not directly, but they're using those core drives.
Yeah, so you can look at it from daily behavior or gamified applications like Waze or Duolingo, or you can just go straight to games. And I think for Black Hat motivation, for instance, my go-to example that I like a lot is Farmville. Where Farmville, a lot of people, including my mother, was blogging, all the time, every day, every day, every day, and they have very strong, we call this core drive 8 loss and avoidance mechanics, where if you don't come back 8 hours later, they'll show you very uninspiring image of your crops all dying, and you have to click on them, clean out one at a time. So that trains the habit of literally coming back every like 8 hours, 12 hours. Sometimes my mom had to wake up at like 5 in the morning to harvest her crops. When she left town, she had to call my cousin to say, "Hey, can you help me manage my farm? I don't want my crops to die. Here's my Facebook email and password," at the time. And to me, it was confusing, right? At the time, it was like I thought people played games because they wanted to be free and do whatever they want, and shed themselves from all the stress and responsibilities in the real world. And now they have a new set of responsibilities, right? And so you see these games are about black hat motivation and also extrinsic. So, you're doing it to collect, 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 collect. But there's not a lot of fun gameplay in it. So as a result, a lot of people are crazy about Farmville. It's very viral for 5 to 9 months. And then people just burn out and they don't want to touch it anymore. And I remember when my mother quit Farmville, it was like the happiest day of her life. And like, oh, I finally left the grasp of this devil. And if you're such a great game, people should be really sad when they quit, as opposed to actually being relieved and happy, right?
Right.
That's the same like with like quitting your gambling addiction or whatnot, also black hat gambling, right? But then you have white hat experiences. If you look at I think one of the best balanced kind of game design is Candy Crush, actually. Candy Crush has been around for, I believe, over a decade now, and it still is popular across a variety of demographics. So it's kind of like it goes beyond the borders of demographics and also time and time, generation. My grandmother, who's I think 75 years old now, plays Candy Crush every single day. And I remember when I was in India, this lady at the counter at the airport was playing Candy Crush before she realized I was there waiting for her to service me, figuring out where I'm supposed to get on my plane. Yeah, and when I play Candy Crush, I get sucked in too. I just try to stay away from it. It's not usually my genre of play. So Candy Crush has managed to grab a lot of different types of people who a lot of them usually don't play games, and it monetized very, very well too. So it used a lot of that white hat core drive about creativity, social progression. But like I said, my strongest example of longevity of a game with white hat is chess, where it's a pretty simple game where there's 64 squares and 32 pieces, and people have been playing for centuries, and it's still fun. They don't have to be like every week, oh, here's a new level, here's a new quest, here's a new character, a new hero enters the scene, right? Chess does not need to add new content to stay engaging because our brains are entertaining itself. It's like being a inventor or a scientist in lifelong experimentation. Whereas if you look at games that rely on other core drives, the moment they stop doing their weekly quests or the monthly new heroes, people just stop playing it. So those are some game examples to showcase those different natures of those core drives.
Oh, those are great. No, I know that I had got sucked into Farmville at one point, and it was the happiest day of my life when I quit. Now, go into a little bit. I'd love to. We talked about some games, but now what about some companies that I'd love some more. For those that are watching, like entrepreneurs that are doing their own business. What are some companies that you've seen have done gamification very well? Because obviously when you've got a business, a lot of times there's mundane tasks or there's tasks that seem a little bit more taxing and they're not as fun to do. But what are some companies that you've seen employ gamification pretty well?
Okay, so there's mainly 4 applications of gamification. The first one being products, so you make your product engaging, exciting. And if you look at, again, Duolingo, gamified language learning app, or if you like a Waze, gamified navigation app, that they use gamification to make the product engaging as opposed to just a pure function focus. It's human focused. Then there's productivity or workplace gamification design. So companies want their employees to work more creatively or happily, and there's better retention for these employees, etc. Then there's marketing gamification. So instead of just one-way blasting your message, it's creating, like online scavenger hunts or different campaigns with storytelling to engage their audience to participate in this. And then there's lifestyle gamification, which is using a variety of techniques and mindsets to make your life more like a game. And sometimes that includes doing more exercising or taking your pills even, or studying hard or working on your career. Now, when it comes to workplace gamification, one of the coolest case studies out there is one that's done by my student Ricardo, who runs a company called Funny Fire. So they provide this gamification service powered by the Octalysis framework to the second largest public bank in Brazil. They're called Caixa Econômica Federal, and so Caixa wanted all their employees to experience this gamified power to turn their work into games. So they unified all these employees, whether it's HR, whether it's sales, whether it's bank, and there's like if I remember correctly, 4,500 banking centers, and all these 70 plus databases. So unified everyone's KPI activities into one central system, and then whenever they do these KPI activities, they will get a random collectible card. So the card would be like one half of a coffee machine or 1/4 of a TV. And so if they keep doing their tasks, then they eventually get all the pieces of that collectible, and they'll get the actual reward. And their goal was to increase the bank's yearly recurring profit, because banks, they usually have recurring income through their interest and whatnot, by 5%. And everyone was wondering, is this possible? Can gamification increase it by 5%? And then it ended up being more than 50%, which actually made the bank $800 million more every year. Okay. And so this design, it has a lot of little nuance and details I'm not going to go into unless you really want to know. But this design made Caixa Econômica Federal upgrade from the second largest public bank in Brazil to the number one public bank in Brazil. So Ricardo said he had some college classmates that worked at the biggest bank. When they saw the numbers, they were shocked, and they called him, like, "What's going on? What happened?" And it's like, "Oh yeah, because they're doing this gamification stuff, and now they're big. They're bigger than you." So it's just a really great example, great case study about how if gamification, if done right, really not just like, oh, it's nice, people are happy. It really pushes your organization to a level that wasn't even imaginable before.
That's a fascinating case study. Yeah, I think too many organizations, I've been at a lot of organizations that are like, we're going to gamify something, but really all they do is add points to what you're doing, and they just add a point system. So what are some other ways that you can kind of talk to, and maybe using other case studies or other things? The one you gave was great of how you've seen some unique ways that other companies are also using gamification besides just implementing a point system, because like you said, it's not just implementing points. That's not what gamification really is.
Yeah, I think some, let's say, lower hanging fruits that doesn't necessarily require software is companies can create more interesting team competitions. So, and by the competitions are more black hat. Okay, so Core Drive 5 is social influence and relatedness. So that's in the middle on the right side of the octagon, which means it's in the middle, which means it could be white hat or black hat, depending on how you design it. White hat is collaboration, social appreciation, and gifting, all those stuff. Black hat is peer pressure, competition, and the like. So depending on how you design it, it could go either way. Now, the reason why team competition is great because it has the best of both worlds. It has the collaborative appreciation aspect, but also the thrill, excitement of competition, because not everyone necessarily wants to be competitive. And if you just are in a competitive environment, it becomes a cutthroat workplace, and people burn out. So a lot of times when you do competition, it's also better to be short bursts. So if you have like a 2-week competition between employees to see who can do the best, people are thrilled, excited, adrenaline's high. They sometimes do a little trash talking. But if you have a year-long competition, most people don't want to be in a year-long, scenario where they're constantly competing with their coworkers and colleagues. So, and that burns people out. So when you have black hat motivation design, you want to do it in short bursts, whereas white hat motivation design, you want to have it happening all the time. So finding short burst milestones, but setting up this team competition and have people build ownership from it with, naming it and kind of divide up the tasks in a way that utilizes everyone's superpowers. All those things can really help push forward a company's team morale and productivity.
No, that's great. That's a very low barrier to entry way that anyone could do it, like you said, without tech. So that's a great way of doing it.
Another low hanging fruit, and not just in the workplace, just in products, all things. What I say is one of the lowest hanging fruit is create triggers to make people express appreciation for each other. Okay, so basically make people feel appreciated as much as possible. So because almost everyone feel underappreciated wherever they go, at home, at school, at work. Right. So if they just go to a place where they actually feel appreciated, doesn't matter if it's a online poker club or this bookstore or whatnot. If they feel appreciated, they just want to go there more often. Now, most of the time, people kind of appreciate each other, but there's no triggers to remind them to express that. So as a company and as an organization, if you create lots of opportunities for people to easily express appreciation for each other, then people just feel happier in this environment. And they just want to be there more often, and they'll work harder, and they'll probably want to stay there for longer.
When you say triggers, what are some examples of some triggers? I mean, obviously, it's things to remind you of that, but like, what are some triggers that people could incorporate?
Yeah. So when we think about trigger, it depends on what kind of medium you have, right? So if you think triggers should accompany with a very easy task, right? So if you look at Facebook, the trigger is just click a like button. You like. It's easy, right? So people just like, oh, yeah, sure, I like. And then it's like, oh, you got 27 likes. You feel kind of good. I have a friend who says that if he took a photo and he thinks he's not going to get more than 8 likes on Facebook, he doesn't share that photo on Facebook. So that's his reward mechanism. But if you look at LinkedIn, like LinkedIn has this recommendation feature, right? And it actually is pretty hard to write actually a full recommendation about, oh, this person's great, blah, 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 blah. You have to use your brain. And because it has more work that you need to put into it, a lot less people do it, right? So you have to request it most, hey, can you help me write a recommendation? And it doesn't feel the same way.
Right.
So you want to try to make it easy. Now, obviously, when things are easy and someone does the hard form, the long form, it means more, but the low-hanging fruit is make it easy. And so you make in the company. So I sometimes will recommend this design, whatever way possible, even through note cards, or hopefully there's some kind of software, or you use like your Slack or whatever, right? It's like whenever people do, and then Slack has that thing, right? Slack has the emojis that people love, right? If you share something and no one ever responds, but they tell you they read it, you're like, eh. But then it's like, oh, look at all these emojis, the dancing guy, the jumping elephant, right? It's like, yay, this feels so good, right? But so you in your company, you want to have something for everyone to easily and abundantly show that, oh, we love what you did. Thanks a lot. We appreciate what you did. Now, this could be abundant, which means people feel they feel warm and fuzzy. But because it's so easy and abundant, they may not appreciate it as much. So then you can have a separate design on top of it that utilizes what we call scarcity. Core Drive 6 is scarcity and impatience, which is like once a week, every employee has one, let's say, token or whatever, and they can give it to a coworker who has been the most helpful in that week. So you can get all these likes anywhere you want, but if someone has like 17 of these tokens in 1 week, then it's like, wow, this guy's amazing. This guy must have helped everyone so much this week. And it actually, because it's scarce, it actually shows accomplishment, which is Core Drive 2 development accomplishment. And that's when they feel really happy about it, and they probably work hard to earn this kind of thing. So those are some easy ways to think about introducing triggers to show appreciation for each other.
No, that's great. We so you just reminded me, we use something called, have you heard of Hey Taco?
I have heard, I've not used it.
You use it? Yeah, it uses that. It does that same exact thing. You install it in Slack, and you can give tacos, and there's a limited amount you can give out. So I love that. Yeah, that's great. Now, okay, so what I would love to know is, honestly, why is YouTube Shorts so addicting? Because I'm sitting here flipping through all the time. Why is it so addicting? Like, dissect that for me.
Have you been on TikTok?
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's the same thing.
It's literally the same thing, and that literally is Core Drive 7, unpredictability and curiosity. So scientists show that whenever you do this flip, right? You look at the new content. It literally is like pulling a slot machine bar and seeing, oh, is this good? It's good. Oh, there's nothing. How about now? Oh, this is so cool. So when our brain feels bored, we immediately want to go to this slot machine game of unpredictability. And the thing is, because it's so short, like usually when it's long, the freshness, that unpredictability kind of disappears, right? And then if you stay, it's because of other core drive like social influence. Oh, I love like Elon Musk speaking, or Joe Rogan, or core drive to develop and accomplish. Whoa, I'm learning so much. But the unpredictability and curiosity kind of fades off if a video drags on for too long. But if it's like every 30 seconds, new video. Remember I talked about the low commitment?
Yeah.
Right? To show appreciation. The same thing. There's a trigger, low commitment to consume the content. And this connects to, I think the best model to think about is BJ Fogg's model, which is behavior equals, it used to be called MAT, motivation times trigger, times ability times trigger, change the trigger to prompt. So you need motivation to do the activity. And in my world, motivation is from those 8 core drives. You need ability to do the activity. So ability means, you have money, you have a skill, it requires less brain cycles, it requires less steps, whatever. And then you need a trigger to remind you to do it. And the trigger is really, or the prompt in his world now. And the prompt is super important in his world because sometimes it doesn't matter how high your motivation or ability is. If there's no prompt, you still don't do it because you didn't even consider the activity. So let's say you're driving on the street and you're almost out of gas. You have high motivation to get gas. You don't want to get stuck on the road. If you're not broke, you have ability to get gas, but maybe you didn't have a prompt because you didn't even notice the gas light going on, and as a result, you got stuck in the road, right? So the prompt is also very important, and so when you look at these YouTube shorts, the motivation is Core Drive 7 unpredictability, like I said. And then the ability is high because it's so easy, so fast, and it just keeps going. It's just like the Netflix autoplay, the next video thing, right? And then, of course, the prompt is there. So that just sucks you in. And the problem is because it's constantly just pushing on the unpredictability, and they're very short. Usually it doesn't have really good in-depth content to let you learn something meaningful. So you feel like, oh, I wasted all my time, right?
Yes.
Most of the time it's like, I was entertained, but I wasted my time. Like I said, Core Drive 7 is right brain, your brain enjoys it. Black hat, you feel out of control. And that's why when Elon Musk is running Twitter, his number one metric, according to himself, is, I think it's called unregretted time on site or on the platform. So it's like, if you spend 30 minutes on Twitter, you should be like, oh, that was good. I really enjoyed it there, as opposed to, oh, I can't believe I just wasted 30 minutes. So I think that's a good, so I think that's a good metric to go by. Now, sometimes if you're depressed, right, and you psychologically, if you watch cute little animals, it will give you emotional resilience. That could be productive, right?
True.
But if you're in good, healthy shape, you're just supposed to get stuff done, and you're watching cat videos, then obviously that leads to regrettable hours.
Right. Exactly. Oh man, such good stuff. So we've got to the ectalysis framework. We talked about the origins of that. What are you working on these days now? And you talked about several different businesses. What's going on today with Yu-kai?
Yeah, now it's kind of fun because I've got myself, to a pretty strong place according to my 10,000 hours of play framework. So this is my second book. I guess I'll start with that because everything I'll reference this. So I'm working on my second book called 10,000 Hours of Play, and it's based on the principle of Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers, where he writes extensively about how people who spend 10,000 hours on some kind of craft becomes a world-leading expert or master at it, especially when they did it when they were younger. And whether it's 10,000 hours beta, of course, it depends on which industry, which field, whatnot, but it doesn't matter. It's just a lot of time. So the premise of my book is that, sure, 10,000 hours makes you successful, but if you gamify your life well, it doesn't have to be 10,000 hours of blood, sweat, and tears. It could be 10,000 hours of enjoyment, fun, and gameplay. And after 10,000 hours of this enjoyment, you automatically become successful. And so this book is based on a 6-step process that I followed to gamify my life. So step 1 is to choose your game. what is meaningful in your life? What are you going to spend your life pursuing and doing that makes it meaningful? Step two is understand your attributes. What are your innate talents? What are you good at? And then step three is choosing your role. Based on your innate talents, you should choose a role within the game that makes sense. So, like, here's a quick example. Let's say your game is to improve sustainability, climate change. Okay, and then you look at your attributes and it's like, oh, I have very good quantitative skills. I can be an engineer. So then your role could be an engineer to create some environmentally friendly machine, clean energy machine to help with the environment. But let's say when you look at your attributes, you don't have that, but you have better communication skills, persuasion skills. Then you can be like, oh, well, then I could be a diplomat and negotiate treaties that are, environmental friendly, or be an activist, whatnot. So, and then once in most games you choose your roles and then it tells you your attributes. Like, you chose warrior, so you have high strength, right, and high vitality. But in life, unfortunately, we have to kind of first see what our attributes are and then choose our role. Then step four is to understand the skills we need to learn to become the strongest player in that field. So it's like, okay, I chose engineer, chose whatever. My game is to improve peace in the Middle East. So it's like, what are the skills I need to know? Well, I need to be really good at history, right? Why conflicts happen, conflict management. I need to know the languages. So you have to kind of figure out all the skills that synergetically work with each other to make you the strongest character on the Earth server. Then step five is build alliances. So finding allies, and these are people who are playing the same game as you are, but they have complementary skills. So sometimes business people, form a partnership with engineers, or maybe one person is better at marketing and sales, the other's more organized, so accounting and be COO like. But basically find allies to help you in this game, and vice versa. And then step six is to do quests. And so the quests are activities that help you learn the skills that you need. So including like reading a book, doing an internship, finding a job, doing a workshop, anything. And it helps you accumulate the skills, help you get closer to beating your game. And ideally, it also helps you grow and build chemistry with your allies. So that's the six-step process that I have. And in my book, each step, I will take like a historical figure. We call them OP heroes, and we dissect why that step was crucial for that person's success. So step one, choosing your game. We chose Gandhi as the OP hero because he first just wanted to be a lawyer in London and live a comfortable life. But then he failed miserably, and he wanted to try again in South Africa. And on the way there, he experienced a lot of racism. And that was when he changed his game. He's like, oh, I want to actually dedicate my life to creating equality, especially in my home country of India. And when he changed his game, his life changed, and he became the legendary Gandhi. And then, step two is Disney, step three is Oprah, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, that's what I'm working on. Hopefully it will be finished by the end of this year, which means it gets released early next year, which is 2024. And so when I talked about my life is kind of fun because I kind of got myself to a place where I'm quite well known in a lot of fields. I have a strong reputation. I'm in some really cool guilds, etc. And so I get a lot of opportunities and invitations to be involved in a lot of different projects. So one that I think is noteworthy is I'm being invited to Ukraine to meet President Zelensky. To explore how can we use the Octalysis framework to rebuild Ukraine after the war. So that's kind of cool.
Super important.
I actually got promoted to Duke, but it's kind of weird to say that. So I only like to say I was knighted by the emperor of the Korean regime that was overthrown, and became like North and South Korea. But this person is the rightful heir of the regime, and he has like he's rebuilding his empire as a digital nation, and he has treaties with nation states like Antigua and whatnot, right? And so he has knighted me, so I could be I could call myself Sir Yu-kai Chou.
Oh my gosh.
Helping him a bit with that project. I'm not Korean, but I'm helping.
That's awesome.
So that's kind of fun. So just doing a lot of things. I'm again running 3 companies. I'm using a Web3 project called MetaBlocks.co to preserve humanity's most important memories onto the blockchain, so they don't live on a single server like Google Photos or Google Drive, where 40 years later, they could shut it down, or your grandchildren don't want to pay for your Google Photos for the rest of their lives, and we want to preserve all those important memories. Yeah, so there's quite a lot of things I'm doing, and I'm getting new invitations to like expand my game and go on new adventures all the time.
Man, sounds like a lot. That sounds like a lot of fun. Very important work too. I mean, with all the different things you listed, I guess I should call you Sir Yu-kai now. So that's awesome.
Yeah, the reason why I don't want to call it, I want to say I was later promoted Duke, because if I say I'm a Duke or Lord Yu-kai, then it sounds like I'm just LARPing. When I say Sir, I'm a knight, it has slightly more believability.
Oh, that is hilarious. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate your time here, Yu-kai. It's been a lot of fun just chatting and catching up and seeing what you've been doing.
Yeah, I had fun too. And down the road next year, if you feel like your audience likes this interview, wants a follow up, I'm happy to come back and be on the show again.
Awesome, man. Well, great chatting, and I'll let you get back to your day, and we'll stay in touch.
Sounds great.
Awesome.
Have a great day, and God bless.
You too. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks for joining us on our Venture Unscripted podcast. If you enjoyed this content, we encourage you to subscribe. Go to cityinnovations.com and click on the link at the top, and you'll find our podcast with all the different episodes. And if you have a guest in mind or someone that you think should be on the podcast, we'd love to interview them. Reach out to us using our contact form. And thanks again for visiting us and watching the episode. We hope you'll join us again.